Now here is the code and the output for this question, right? Now look at the code, and I'll just try to describe what we are doing here, and you will be able to associate each of those verbs that we discussed earlier with the solution that we have here, right? So we take up this data set, which is basically ecom, and then we filter out all the purchases. So since we are looking at average order value, we need data only for those visits which resulted in a conversion. So we'll filter out all those rows of data which resulted in a conversion, right? The next step is we don't need all these columns in the data set to compute the average order value, right? We just need two columns. One is the device column, because we are trying to compute the average order value for each device type, and the second one is the order value column, right? Because we need to sum up the order value and then divide it by the number of orders. So we'll select these two columns using the select function. And since we need to sum up the order value for each device type, we'll group this data set by the device column, right? So then it will create three different data sets, one for those visits which came from desktop, one for those visits which came from mobile, and one for those visits which came from tablet, right? And then we summarize the revenue and orders, right? So we use the sum function to add all the revenue from all these orders, and we use another function to calculate the number of orders, right? So number of orders here is just the number of rows, because we have filtered out all the non-purchases. We only have data related to purchases or those visits which resulted in a conversion, right? So the total number of orders is nothing but the number of rows in each of these group data sets, and the total revenue is arrived by summing up the order value column. That's why we use the sum function here. Now once we summarize these three data sets, then we create a new column called AOV by dividing the revenue column by the orders column. In the previous step, when we summarize the data set, two new columns were created, which was revenue and orders, and using those two we create a new column called AOV, and this we do by using the mutate function. Finally, we just need two columns from this whole data set that we have, which is the device column and the AOV column, right? So again we use the select function and we select the device and AOV column, right? So I'm just showing you this because you can easily map this to the dplyr verbs that we talked about just a bit before, right? So now we'll slowly go step by step, right? First we learn how to filter the data, then we learn how to select them, then we learn how to group the data, summarize them, and then finally create new variables, right?